Now, the biggest risk with a recession is unemployment. In other words, job loss.
So Singapore is entering a recession. It was confirmed by the Monetary Authority of Singapore late April this year in a 132-page report. But what does entering a recession mean? How does it affect you and what can you do? We speak to a finance expert to find out.
Hi, I'm Vasu Menon. I'm an Executive Director for Investment Strategy at OCBC Bank. I've spent the last 35 years tracking and monitoring the markets very, very closely.
What is a recession and what does it mean when an economy like Singapore's enters a recession?
A recession typically means 2 quarters of economic decline, or in other words, at least 6 months of economic decline. Now, the biggest risk with a recession is unemployment. In other words, job loss. Either you lose your job or you get a pay cut. And of course, the fallout from that is that essentially it means you get to spend less if you have less income. So there's going to be a knock-on effect on other parts of the economy because of recession.
How does the recession affect different groups of people?
Let's start with students. Essentially there's an indirect impact and there's also a direct impact. Indirect impact in the sense that, if you're depending on your parents for allowance and your parents are impacted by the recession, if they get a pay cut or they lose their job, that means you may lose your allowance altogether or you may get a reduced allowance.
Oh, I have 3 kids and no money. Why can't I have no kids and 3 money?
And that means you get less money to spend. And that also means that maybe you'll have to look for a job yourself. But on the flip side, with the recession, jobs are going to be harder to come by. So part-time jobs may not be as available as before the recession. So with students, there is an impact, even though you're not working in the job market. As far as graduates are concerned, if you have just graduated and you're looking for a job in the market, recession is not the best of times because it means there are not going to be as many jobs. Companies are going to be careful with hiring, expanding. You may have had an idea in your mind as to what you're going to work as, but because of the recession, you may have to perhaps be nimble enough and explore other opportunities. With working adults, a recession impacts them in the sense that there's a risk that they could lose their job or they could suffer a pay cut or they could lose benefits while working in a company. And all that means less money in the pocket. But more than that, it also means that you have less to save, and that affects things that will impact you in the long term. Like, for example, buying a house, getting married, perhaps even taking a holiday. For retirees and senior citizens, a recession also has a significant impact on them in a number of ways. If you're a retiree, you're depending on your children for your monthly income. And if your children are impacted by the recession, there's a risk that you may not get as much allowance as before. In a recession, typically returns on assets fall. You get lower returns on your assets, on your savings. Some retirees may depend on the interest income from their fixed deposits or returns on their investments to maintain their livelihood, to keep themselves going. So a recession has fairly widespread impact on different segments of the population.
COVID-19 has essentially disrupted the global economy, but how much did the virus play a part in the recession in Singapore?
Well, the virus plays a very, very big part. This is a recession caused by a health crisis. What has happened is that governments have had to force companies to shut down, even companies that are doing well. And all that because, the government wants to ensure that the health of its citizens are safeguarded, that we are protected from the virus. So in some ways, this is an induced recession. It's a very unusual recession.
Seems like what you said so far has been quite negative. So are there any benefits to a recession?
There are benefits to a recession. A recession is not all gloom and doom. In some ways, a recession sometimes forces all of us to start taking stock of our finances, being more serious about our finances. You're forced to face reality and see where you can cut back and, save even more.
Well, since times are bad, maybe prices might drop. So does the recession equals cheaper things?
Now, there are certain goods, services that have what we call inelastic demand. These are essential services and you need them, whether it's good times or bad times. For example, groceries, shopping, for your daily needs. Those things, you may not see prices fall. There's even a risk that prices in some cases may go up a little bit because companies that are selling these products may not be able to sell as much as before. And so they may, increase prices a little bit to make up for the shortfall and to ensure that, they remain profitable and viable.
So how does the economy recover from a recession?
Typically, an economy recovers from a recession with the help of the government and with the help of policymakers. And what I mean by that is the government may have to step in, increase spending, offer targeted measures and helping industries that are especially impacted by the recession. In other words, government policy helps to reduce the negative impact from the recession, but it doesn't really play such a big part in terms of boosting the economy. Really, the recovery will come when the restrictions are removed, the health crisis comes to pass, and economic activity resumes as it was before.
Okay, do you have any advice for people, especially young people like me, on going through this recession?
Many young adults may not have seen severe recessions before, and many of them may get spooked if this recession turns out to be quite severe. But I think it's important to keep an open mind. We may have a preset idea of what we want to work as, what we want to do in our careers, but sometimes, a recession forces you to change those plans. It may not be a bad thing. Sometimes, it may lead you to a better path. Be careful with your spending. I think in a recession like that, make sure you save, make sure you look to invest those savings, and it's not all gloom and doom. There are silver linings. It's really up to you to look for those silver linings.